Now, many Russians who openly oppose the war in Ukraine have left the country in the last months for fear of prosecution. But the pressure from the Russian state continues, even abroad, on dissidents and their families. DW met Arshak Makitcha in Berlin. He's a climate activist who fled Russia shortly after the start of the war.
This passport is at the heart of a fight between climate activist Arshak Makitchan and the Russian state. He and his two brothers and father have been stripped of Russian citizenship. Now they are scattered. Arshak is in Berlin.
We
lived our whole lives in Russia. I was there since the age of 1. I studied in Moscow Conservatory. My younger brother was born there. So I don't get what they've done. Is my marriage certificate still valid? My wife is Russian. What about my education? Do I even exist?
Arshak's family moved to Russia from Armenia in 1990s. They all got Russian citizenship and have no other. But earlier this year, a Russian court ruled there were mistakes in their applications. Arshak and his lawyers are convinced the actual reason is his political work. He's not only Russia's most prominent Friday for Future activist, he now combines this with opposing the invasion in Ukraine. He wants stronger embargoes on fossil fuels from Russia and even called for Putin's resignation at a rally in Berlin. He says the removal of his citizenship could be designed to make him into an example and silence others.
It's meant to intimidate the non-Russian population of Russia so that they don't oppose the war and don't feel like rightful citizens.
Arshak has a month to appeal the ruling on his citizenship, but little hope of winning. Then he, his brothers and his father will likely become stateless.
Many people say I should be happy to lose my Russian citizenship because Russia is a terrorist state. Russia has a fascist regime now, but for me it's something bigger than the Russian state. And I love my country.
Arshak and his lawyers intend to take his citizenship case as far as the UN Human Rights Council, but that could drag on for years. In the meantime, Arshak seeks support from German and European politicians and continues his fight for the climate and peace.
Well, I'm joined now by DW's Russia analyst Konstantin Eggert. Konstantin, we heard there from just one person in the report, Arshak. But do we know if this is a common thread for the thousands of other peoples who have left Russia?
Well, not yet. But again, the policies of the Russian state under Putin to some extent resemble policies of the Bolshevik regime, especially under Stalin, when repression is selective. It's like a lottery of repressions. Because of that, people feel threatened. If you apply certain law in a systematic way, then if you find yourself on the receiving end of the state repression, you can work your way around it, find some other ways of kind of avoiding repression. If it is completely random, that you are usually unprepared. But I think it is rather an example than the beginning of a trend. And also, as far as I remember, I'm not a lawyer, but according to the current Russian laws, you cannot basically remove the citizenship from a person, even if it was received with some kind of irregularities, if there is no chance for a person to receive or to get another citizenship, then a person becomes stateless. I think, that's my suspicion, that may be the main argument of his lawyers.
So to broaden out again, what effect does the exodus of people have on the Russian economy and perhaps more importantly, its politics, if any?
Well, the exodus that we've seen from Russia in the last 8-9 months is, of course, very significant. You see people that leave are not only political activists and politicized people generally. These are also people who see, maybe they're not particularly political, but they see no future in Russia. These are people that are active, that are entrepreneurial, that are educated, that speak foreign languages, that usually, not always, but usually live in big metropolitan centers. That is, of course, a long-term deficiency. The Russian economy and Russian society will take a long-term hit. But for now, Putin is very much satisfied with that. For him, the fewer there of these kind of smart, educated people that can voice their opinion, the better it is for the regime.
There was a beautiful moment in that report when Arshak was talking about his pride for Russia. Is there a sense that these exiles have left for good?
Well, Russian 20th century seen several waves of immigration, starting with the Bolshevik takeover in 1917. And sadly, few of those exiles returned. So, of course, history never repeats itself at the same time. So let's hope if this regime is not lasting for a long time, then probably at least some of those people will come back and work for the benefit of Russian future. But again, history teaches us otherwise. And that is a sad fact.
Konstantin Eggert, great to get your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tens of thousands of new conscripts from Russia's recent partial mobilization are now on the front lines in Ukraine, according to Moscow. And analysts suggest that to put those boots on the ground, Putin is relying on ethnic minority recruits from poorer parts of the country. Regions such as Buryatia, which is located in southeastern Siberia. Tens of thousands of Buryats have fled to Mongolia to evade conscription to Ukraine. The influx of migrants has put further pressure on Mongolia's government, as Powen Wang reports from Ulaanbaatar.
Odar is practicing his Mongolian with his host mother. Just 2 months ago, his home was in the Russian Republic of Buryatia. But on September 23rd, he fled to neighboring Mongolia to avoid conscription in the Ukraine war.
It really breaks your heart when you have to run away. You have no idea where to go and how long you may leave. You don't even know if you will ever come back.
Eldar used to work as an accountant until the war turned his world upside down. He's angry that so many of his people have been sent to fight in a war that doesn't make any sense to Buryats.
The Republic of Buryatia is where the soul of the Buryat lives. It is the home of our language and our culture. Now its villages have been desolated, and for the people of Buryatia, it's like a strong punch to the stomach.
Sesky, a retired teacher from Mongolia, found Oda on the street. After learning about his background, she offered him free food and accommodation. She said she would be his mother while he stays in Mongolia.
I wish everyone could stay with their mothers. I am against the war. War is not something anyone wants.
Local people told us that after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the partial mobilization, the city was filled with Russians. According to the statistic, by the end of October, there are about 1,500 Russians had fled to Ulaanbaatar, and most of them are ethnic minorities. The capital was not prepared for such a sudden influx of migrants. But while the country is not a signatory to the UN Refugee Convention and has no legislation addressing asylum seekers, Mongolians have been showing solidarity with the new arrivals by lending a helping hand. Elton Tuya is getting ready for her borders. She owns a 2-floor restaurant on the outskirts of Ulaanbaatar. After meeting homeless Russians on the street, she decided to turn her whole place into a temporary shelter. She has accommodations for up to 20 Russians and charges only enough to cover expenses.
Winter in Mongolia is very harsh. You will get sick if you stay outside at these temperatures. Being sick in a foreign country is very difficult. That is why I turned my place into a temporary home to help people.
Some of the Russian refugees have found work in construction or agriculture to obtain a work visa, while others have headed to a third country. Oda was one of the lucky ones. He managed to get a student visa to stay in Mongolia.
Unfortunately, those who couldn't leave the country in time are stuck there. I know a law has passed, and now people face criminal charges for evading mobilization. So either you go to prison or go to war.
Oda feels badly about what is happening in Ukraine, but he takes comfort in knowing that at least he will not be part of an unjust war. In the meantime, he is doing his best to dispel the disinformation spread by Russia and speak up for his fellow Buryats while he is in Mongolia.